on a cold winter night, I heard the cry of a child mixed with the whispers of a woman. My heart pounded violently as I remembered that fateful day at sea. I opened the door to the adjacent room, and there I saw her, my wife, in a framed picture on the wall, her features distorted. Her wide-open eyes stared at me as if asking one question. Why didn't you save us? My name is Adam, and this is my story. It all began on a boat trip across a calm sea. She was sitting in front of me, her hair flowing, and her smile radiant. I never realized those moments would be her last. When the winds picked up, we dismissed them as a passing breeze. But suddenly the storm intensified. The waves grew higher, the winds stronger, and the boat began to sway violently. I screamed her name, trying to grab her hand, but a massive wave swept her away. "Help me! Help me!" Those were her last words before she vanished. I searched for her frantically, calling her name until my throat felt raw. But the storm was stronger than any hope I had. When the storm finally subsided, I found myself alone in a shattered boat. I couldn't believe I had survived, or perhaps I wished I hadn't. Days passed like ghosts haunting me. At first it was just sorrow, but on the 7th night, the nightmares began. I saw her standing before me, her hair wet, her eyes filled with reproach. "Why didn't you save me?" she asked, her voice laden with pain. I would wake up screaming. Drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. Then it began to seep into my waking hours. I heard her voice when I was alone. I saw her shadow when I passed by mirrors. One night, as I looked into the mirror, I saw her face behind me. "You tormented me," she said, her gaze freezing my blood. Her voice shattered me, chasing me everywhere I went. I began to hate the sound of her voice, a hatred so intense that I tore up every picture of her. The photos I had kept by my bedside, the ones in my wallet, now became unbearable. I burned them all, but her spirit never left me. In one of my nightmares, she appeared holding a small child crying loudly. The child looked at me, his eyes filled with blame, as though asking, "Why did you abandon me?" In that moment, the truth struck me like lightning. Perhaps she was pregnant. Perhaps that was my child. Our child. The revelation was crushing. From that day on, I couldn't bear the sound of a baby crying. Any child's cry, even from a distance, would make me tremble, as though I were facing her ghost. I heard the baby's cries everywhere. Once in the kitchen, another time in the dark hallways, and sometimes while walking down the street. I saw his shadow, sitting at her feet, staring at me in devastating silence. I started to run from everything. I shut all the windows in the house, covered the mirrors, and stopped going outside. But even that didn't protect me. Every night, they appeared together. Her, with her wet hair and eyes full of blame, and the baby in her arms, screaming and screaming without end. "Why didn't you save us?" she repeated mercilessly, her voice rising with the baby's cries. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I screamed, "I'm sorry! I tried! I couldn't!" But the only response was her cold smile and the baby's cries growing louder. My life became a series of lost moments. In every waking moment, I felt on the brink of collapse. At first, I told myself I just needed rest, but every time I closed my eyes, the nightmares returned. And when I awoke, the daylight revealed a reality worse than any dream. Suddenly, things became even stranger. One night, as I sat in my room at midnight, I noticed something odd. There was a faint sound, like something moving behind the wall. I cautiously approached and pressed my ear to the wall. The sound grew louder and terrifyingly clear. It was a faint voice, like strange whispers, occasionally interrupted by a baby's cries. I entered the next room. The air was cold, as if the walls themselves were breathing. In the center of the room, there was a new picture on the wall, a picture of my wife. But the picture was distorted. Her eyes were wide open, her lips twisted in a horrifying way, as if she were trapped in another realm. I couldn't look away. I felt as though I were drowning in an endless abyss. That night, something different happened. I was in the kitchen making a cup of coffee, trying to escape my disturbing thoughts. But before I could take a sip, I felt something heavy pass beside me. I turned, and there on the table was a small piece of paper. It was written in her handwriting. "Come to me." The paper was soaked in blood. I couldn't resist my curiosity. I took the paper and went to the room where I had first seen her. As soon as I entered, I felt her presence. There, in the darkness, she stood. This time her features were not distorted. She was as she had been on that beautiful day on the boat. But her eyes were filled with pain. "Will you keep running?" she whispered softly, as if addressing someone deep within me. Her words pierced me as if they were burrowing straight into my mind. It was as though she knew everything. Was I running from myself? From the hell I had created with my own hands? I thought for a long time, and then I decided to face the truth. I went to the sea. For the first time in months since the incident, I remembered everything, the waves, the wind, and the darkness that consumed us. The sea was calm, but within me, it carried a storm. As I stood on the shore, I saw something in the water. It was her face, appearing and disappearing between the waves, as though she were waiting for me. She stared at me, as though waiting for one word. I ran toward the sea, closed my eyes, and tried to gather all the courage I had left. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my eyes tightly shut. "I'm sorry for everything." At that moment, I felt something strange. A heavy weight lifted from my chest, as though the spirit that had haunted me was beginning to retreat. When I opened my eyes, the waves had calmed, and the sea returned to its stillness. And as I looked around, I no longer heard the cries. The shadows were gone. This was Adam's story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe and like for more chilling tales. Got a horror story of your own? Drop it in the comments below. Maybe your story will be the next one we share.